guys, Elizabeth Ashley here, and I am just putting this video together because I've had a few people emailing me about similar different things, and one that comes up quite often is help me out about sage oil and clary sage oil. I'm not clear about which one I should be using and when, so I just thought, yeah, useful. I'll just put together a little video. It's a good thing to show some beginners and also more advanced aromatherapists, really, because it is confusing. So yeah, clary sage oil versus sage oil. So first of all, let me show you my clary sage bush, because, and it sounds rude, but my bush has gone mad, folks. 1 second. So can you see it? It's enormous. And right down here, poor old marjoram, not even getting a look in at the sunshine. So I am going to have to weed it, and actually I wish I had a still. Gosh, I've just disturbed it and the smell is incredible. I'm going to pick a piece while I'm here because that's useful. Actually, I've got to make a roast chicken afterwards, and that will be useful for a bit of stuffing. So I'm just going to pause the video while I put you on the stand, because it's not very easy to watch me at the moment, is it? 1 sec. Right, I'm back. Best laid plans of mice and men. I was only going to pause the video and then my phone started ringing and it all went a bit pear-shaped. But I'm back, and I'm talking about sage oil versus, I haven't got a clary sage bush, I really want one, but clary sage essential oil. So, differences. Well, first of all, you saw how big the sage bush had got, and that's because it's a very, very greedy plant. We bought a load of different kinds of salvia last year, different subspecies, all pretty ones, and put them in the flower bed. And my husband Daryl had done lots and lots of digging and put loads of manure in, and all the salvia bushes became absolutely enormous, and everything else stayed small. And that's because salvia just takes everything. So that is an important thing to remember. Common sage, or the essential oil sage, Dalmatian sage, you might see it, is very, very pervasive. It's greedy, but it's very, very penetrating. And the reason for its deeply penetrating actions is, well, several reasons. It's the chemistry, really. We tend not to use sage oil very much in essential oil, in aromatherapy, because it's high in a chemical constituent called thujone. Now, it's not its primary constituent. I think most of its chemistry is 1,8-cineol, which is the chemical that we see in things like eucalyptus. But thujone is a very, very strong constituent, and it's also found in a lot of essential oils that are classified as hazardous, like thuja, which is nearly all thujone, and wormwood. And wormwood we make absinthe out of, and the reason absinthe is so blooming difficult is because of the thujone in it. So I don't know if you know, actually, the chemical constituents, essential oils are what's called secondary metabolites in the plant. So the plant grows, and because it's rooted in one place by its roots, it can't go anywhere to protect itself. So for the most part, essential oils aren't needed for anything primary, the actual survival of the plant, how it feeds itself, but it's secondary function, so to protect it and to help its survival and to perpetuate its survival. So the essential components, these secondary metabolites, tend to form to attract bees and pollinators, but also to deter anything that comes near it that might eat it. But also it will put down different secondary metabolites into the soil to wipe out other species around it, and it will just look after itself. So an oil like sage comes from a bush that, as you can see, overtakes everything. So that gives you an indication of how its essential oil will work, that it will be very, very bullish. So there we go. So in the plant, 1,8-cineol, as I say, is fundamentally it's an insect repellent. Thujone is also a natural insect repellent, but it's also bactericidal, and also there's quite a lot of camphor in sage as well. So it's not the same kind of sage, but many of you will recognize it from the smudging that the Native American Indians used it for, and that's absolutely true, because it's very, very cleansing oil to the mind. If you have too much Thujone, and I'm talking about if you drink a bottle of Thujone really, but also if you potentially, I think if you drank a lot of absinthe and things, you would have convulsions, and potentially it's lethal. And it's because it really affects this part of the brain called the GABA receptors. But there's lots of research showing how sage is potentially going to be useful for people who have got Alzheimer's disease, because it helps with the clarity of their thinking and helps against the actual deterioration of the neurons. So it's a very, very good oil for cleansing spiritually and mentally. Also, traditional medicine uses it in menopause to help people who, ladies who have hot flushes, and also night sweats, particularly good for sweats. But the problem being that sage oil will really make you bleed heavily. Ladies, it'll make them bleed heavily. It's raining, so hopefully we don't have to stop. It's always raining here. So if we want to use the properties, but we don't want to get involved in this heavy bleeding, then there is a way to do it, and that's what's called a homeopathic dose. Now, I use homeopathic doses quite a lot because I like using the emotional side of the essential oils. And what you do is you use 1/15 of a drop. Now that sounds complicated, but it's not, because you use it for oils, the same oils really, over and over again, which are ones that are too strong, like sage. So what I do is I get 14 drops of carrier oil. Just use a little pipette, count them up: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then put 1 drop of sage into essential oil into that, and then I use 1 drop of the mix. Now in that dilution, it's nice and safe to use, and we're going to use it for clearing the mind. Another thing that it's fantastic for is pulled muscles. So if you've got any athletes or anybody that's been doing who's got very, very strong muscles and has pulled them, in men you don't have this problem with bleeding, so you can just use it in standard dilution. But for women, I would always recommend using sage oil in 1/15 drop. You might also see Spanish sage. Now, I don't remember what the Latin name is. It's something that sounds like lavender, Salvia lavandula, something. Sounds like lavender, but it's Spanish sage. And that has pretty much the same chemical constituents as common sage. So it has all these lovely mental faculties, but it doesn't have the thujone content, so it's much, much easier to use. So if you want to use sage oil, then you would be better seeking out Spanish sage. So by contrast, we have my darling Clary sage oil. Now, like I say, I haven't got one to show you, but they are so pretty. Have a look on the front of my book. I've written a book about Clary sage, and it's got all lovely, beautiful, beautiful flowers. It's so pretty. They smell very different. So your sage is, and bear in mind, the essential oil is not exactly the same as the herb, because not all of the chemical constituents pass through distillation, but it's similar. And probably the essential is a little bit spicier than that, perhaps, but it's very earthy smelling, whereas the Clary sage oil is sweet, almost appley. Do you know, it always reminds me of cold tea. I love it, I love it, I love it. And this is much easier to use, but I'm not saying that it's easy, because you do need to be careful. I'm rocking the table again, sorry. You do have to be careful about using too much of it, because it's stupefying. So as you can see, I've used loads, but it makes you a bit dopey, so it's difficult to drive, operate machinery. It can give you hallucinations. I'm sure many of you will know that it was used to, clary sage was used to adulterate beer in the 16th century, and it would taste the same as the hops, and you would get very, very drunk very quickly, but you'd know the next day that you'd taken it, been drinking clary sage beer, because you'd have this dreadful headache. And if you use too much clary sage oil, then you will get a headache. But you know, when you think, I mean, we've talked about chemistry, but I like to think of how the ancients looked at the plants. They didn't look at oils because they didn't have oils, but looked at plants. So they ranked common sage, say Salvia officinalis, as an oil, a plant that was ruled by Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's about expansion and about the liver in particular. And if you look at the old herbals, they all say the same thing. It's an oil for a plant for overindulgence and for problems with the liver. There's a blackbird on my table throwing things at me as I speak. So this is but also much happier oil. And do you know, it's about authority and wisdom, Jupiter. And if you think of how the Native Americans used it, not only did they smudge for energy, but they also smudged to in the sweat lodges. They used it in the sweat lodges to come into contact with the elders. And it is very much about spiritual alignment and seeing your shadow self, I suppose. The good thing about, I suppose, the one way I use the sage essential oil is if somebody's mean to themselves. I can't think of another way of putting it. So if you are self-sabotaging, yeah, so it kind of holds a mirror up to yourself to go, what are you doing? Seriously, you're better than this. Stop doing it. So if somebody is self-sabotaging, then sage oil is the way to go to do it. And it's at this, you know, listening to your higher mind, Jupiter authority. But clary sage has two rulers. It's a moon medicine and also a Mercury medicine. Now, I can't think of, it's so clever how they came up with that, because it's very much about moods. So whereas sage is about clarifying thinking, thoughts, this is about clarifying emotions. So if you are if you're menopausal, actually, or if you're premenstrual and you have this horrible, I just can't see straight, I'm so annoyed and the hormones are getting better of you, then clary sage is the wonderful thing to go for. Both are uterine in different ways. If you look at the old herbals, they all say use sage to dispel the dead fetus. And while there isn't any proof that an essential oil has ever caused an abortion or a miscarriage, and we just don't, you know, why would we take risks with that? It's different. So this would definitely purges the body of all the blood, you know, get it out, and there is, you know, it's a hemorrhaging oil. You just don't. Whereas this is a uterine tonic. So by the same way, it's helping to tone the uterus, and certainly in labour you get contractions like that with clary sage. So, you know, this is much more benign. Yeah, I would say use it easily with men, use it carefully with women. So you're looking at clearing out negative thought process. You talk muscular things for Jupiter medicine, so rheumatism, arthritis, digestive, of course, that's why we have it in stuffing. That's why I'm going to put it in my stuffing. And, you know, anything to do with overindulgence, but also, you know, what about overindulgence in terms of work and stress and that mental burnout? That certainly is, you know, just wipe it away. Take out the negativity, wipe it away. And so you've got that smudging from the tribal medicine, but essential oil will do the same thing. And I don't think for a second, don't be putting 2 or 3 drops in the bath. That's just playing the fool's game. but you know, you can just make a big dilution of bath salts with just 1 drop in and then use that. So that's easy. But to me, I would go for Clary Sage Oil if you can, if we're talking moods or spasms, antispasmodic. And interestingly, actually, we've talked about how there's a lot of experimentation about Alzheimer's. The same applies for this one. They seem to work on the brain, thank you, Train, in different ways. So, but yeah, I'm not going to go into that in depth. Look at the Clary Sage book. It's a really interesting book. Also, I suppose one thing that I should say is that estrogen, you see a lot of mention of Clary Sage and estrogen on websites, and that it's estrogenic, so, which it is, but what does that mean? Well, you'll quite often see people saying that it stimulates estrogen. No, it doesn't. Some people will say there's estrogen in a bottle of Clary Sage essential oil. No, there isn't. It mimics estrogen. So if estrogen is responsible for triggering another mechanism, like for example estrogen is in charge of helps with serotonin in the body, that's the mood modulator, as well as many other different processes, and dopamine as well. And interestingly, dopamine has many different functions, and it's responsible for our reward systems in our minds. So it's quintessentially linked to addiction as well as many other things. And they found that using estrogen can help people, or men actually, help men who are suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder. And so yeah, if Clary Sage mimics estrogen, then we can use it to help with that obsessive behavior. And I always think that's very interesting, because in my PMT week, I don't know about you, but I'm really obsessive, and I didn't notice that till I started reading the research. But yeah, if you start to get obsessional, then Clary Sage is the one to use. So interestingly, very different, same family, but different. And I yeah, just one last thing, because there's always more in the mire, isn't there? Just thinking of the names, really. So if you think of the Latin name that came from Roman uses, they used to call this Salvia salvatorix, the plant that heals and saves. Salvia means save. Salvia scloria, which is clear sight. So yeah, the reason why they called that, actually, it's not really so relevant with the oil, but if you take a seed out of Clary Sage plant, you can put it in the eye and it will collect together. I'm going to say fuselage, but that can't be right. That can't be the right word. But you know, debris that is in the eye. So if there's any infection, they used to put a Clary Sage seed in, and it actually attracted like a magnet all the rubbish that was in the eye, and so that's why they call it clear sight. But also, I think, yeah, that thing of you're just not seeing right when you've got your period and your menopause, you know, it starts to slant the emotions, then yeah, clear sight. So interesting. Anyway, I hope that's helped you. If you're thinking that you'd like to try sage, go ahead, but small dilutions. Clary Sage, still small dilutions, but much easier. Anyway, guidelines in my book, and also there is a long lecture about Clary Sage in my course that you might find interesting. Okay, hope you found that good. See you soon.